Welcome back. This is Jeff Kwenange Live, and on the bench is Professor Makau Mutua. He is the President's constitutional advisor, as well as on the issues of human rights, the chair of the panel that was composed by the head of state to look into compensation of victims of demonstrations or protests in the country and dating back to 2017. Prof, many thanks for your time.
Thank you so much. It's great to be back here. It's been a long time. And I was just wondering as I was coming in whether the fire extinguisher still works. Yeah. Does it still work?
If need be.
If need be?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make sure you don't use it.
It's a tool for deployment.
It's a tool for deployment.
Many thanks for your time.
Thank you so much.
It's been 3 years since we had our last conversation.
Yes, true.
Okay, let's get direct into it.
Yes.
And it's a sad day for the legal fraternity, is it, in the country. Experienced advocate and evidence law expert, a teacher of many, was killed. Yeah. Was he someone known to you?
I knew him, not very well. Last night I was just, settling down after, a long day's work. And then I opened my phone and I saw this horrible news. I could not believe what I was reading. It appeared to be a gangland execution, which really shuddered me at the time, because if that can happen to such a person in such an area, then I think we need to think more about security in this country and safety. Yeah.
All right, and these are investigations ongoing. So let's get into the panel that was formed by the head of state, and you advise him on constitutional and human rights matters.
Yes.
We'll come to the array of issues that have happened ever since his election in 2022. But first, before even compensation, there's an absurdity, is it, in the cases of Kenyans, more than 70, who are charged with terrorism law for taking part in demonstrations. Should that be your starting point first?
You see, Abdulkader, the performance of democracy is a very difficult thing. I said when we were speaking at KICC on Katiba Day that our constitution, our democracy, is only 15 years of age. And so we are learning how to perform particularly the right to assembly, the right to speak, and the right to associate. It's a complex process for us to master this ritual of democracy. And so what we have seen over the last 2 years, June 2024, and then the first part of this year, is regrettable. We've seen scenes that are somewhat dystopian, quite frankly, where the police have clashed with demonstrators. A lot of people have lost their lives, most of those being civilians, but of course some law enforcement. So I think what we are doing is responding to this pain that people are suffering. People have lost their loved ones. And I think on the law enforcement side, I think they are trying to grapple with how you address such an outcome. But what my panel seeks to do is to, first of all, to cool down temperatures in the country. Because, people have lost loved ones. People have lost children, their fathers, breadwinners. These are very serious things to happen in a country. And so what we want to do is to do two things initially, is to compensate the victims by dignifying them, but also giving them compensation that will give them an economic meaning for their lives. Some of them to start all over again because what they had was taken away. So that's compensation and reparation. But then over the long term, we want to think about how do you really perform Article 37 of the Constitution.
On demonstrations.
On demonstrations.
We'll come to the specific aspect of that and also the compensation concept and the process, all right?
Yes, yes.
But also as an intellectual who has written extensively about democracies and how they ought to function, is it not preposterous that demonstrators are charged with terrorism law? That's an injustice, is it? Especially to young Kenyans who even can't afford the bond to be out of jails.
I mean, as I said, I think the state is grappling with how do you deal with particular acts that go beyond simply picketing, demonstrating, and assembling. I think in some certain cases, I think, actions that were taken by demonstrators were, were frankly shocking. I mean, we saw that, for example, a police officer, being killed. We saw law enforcement infrastructure being razed to the ground. We saw, in 2024, we saw the Parliament, the National Assembly, almost being burned down. So these are serious, serious offenses. And so I think our legal system ought to look at that and decide what kind of offenses, fit those kinds of, what kinds of crimes, fit those offenses. Yeah.
So let's come to the constitution of the panel that you chair.
Yes.
And of course, there is a court matter following a petition that was found. But ideally, first, have you appealed against the ruling by the High Court?
We are now discussing our response, and it will be evident in the next day or so.
Yeah. I don't want to cross the bridge before reaching it, but what happens if the court finds that the constitution of the panel that you chair is unconstitutional, null and void?
Well, luckily our judicial system provides an appellate process. So we'll, of course, engage the High Court, respond, and if necessary, make an appeal all the way to the top, because we believe ourselves that this is a necessary process for this country to bring national healing, to bring closure to what happened, and so that we can, as a country, open a new page, a new chapter in this country's history in terms of how we perform, as I said, Article 37.
Of the Constitution.
Of the Constitution.
But ideally also, as a scholar, you understand that in such situations where there are excesses by the state,
yes,
clearly there are laid out procedures for the perpetrators to be brought to book, isn't it?
Yes.
They are prosecuted and victims compensated via a judicial process. Obviously, on the question of accountability,
yes,
what more value do you think that the panel you chair will add to this when there are clear processes?
So I just want to make clear that there are several limbs of justice. One limb clearly is a judicial process where, for example, perpetrators are held to account in a court of law. Another limb of justice is truth-telling. People appearing in public forums and telling their own truth about what happened to them, naming perpetrators so that they can be shamed. But ultimately, also, there has to be damages paid to those who are harmed. And I want to just make it clear that compensation is a key part of justice. Because at the end of the day, even if you go through a court process, the end result will be either or both the jailing, the sentencing to jail of the perpetrator, and if there's a civil component to it, then the award of damages. Yeah. What we are doing now is to make sure that people whose family members have been lost and who are grieving, and in many cases some of these are breadwinners. There's no one else left to help them. For example, I was listening to a young woman at KICC the other day who told a horrible story about what has happened to her since her husband, was killed. So we want to make sure that such a person can be given something. We cannot, of course, return her husband back. That is not possible. Okay. But we want to make sure that we can give her something that can, put her back on her feet again.
Okay. And Prof, when we get back from the break,
yes,
we now extensively get into that and also the formation of it, whether it is an extension to advance President William Ruto and the former Prime Minister who you advised, and now you are advising the President,
yes, and
their political cause.
Yes.
And also talk about compensation plus justice, all that, and also your previous political stances here on the broadcast, given that the country has as well a long history of non-implementation of recommendations like a panel of this caliber.
I look
Professor
forward to
Makau,
it.
yes. Professor Makau Mutua is on the bench. He advises the President on the Constitution and Human Rights Affairs, critic of his before the election, and he now chairs the panel that was put together by the head of state, here to talk about all. And we, of course, welcome your contributions as well as the victims who have responded to our poster when we loaded that on our social media handles. We'll be putting them on the magic wall. And we are back on the bench after the break here on the broadcast. Stay tuned.